I had the chance. And now that I've put my guests in a horrible position to have to segue, I'm going to introduce my friend Belinda Thurston, who is here to talk about Just Be Yoga. And I will tell you, one of the things that I wish that Kim had had a chance to participate in is I think yoga is a tremendously healing approach, and I wanted to talk a little bit with you about how maybe that young women who are struggling with issues like this this is a good way for them to get in touch with their body in a new way.
Right. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your story, Bonnie, and it's a really good segue into yoga. I was trying to quickly look up information because a young lady who's a dear friend and a mentee of mine is holding a workshop after having gotten training in yoga for eating disorders.
Really?
There is a workshop coming up October 3rd and 4th that weekend. So I was looking up the date at Center for Yoga Movement and Massage. So folks, look up Center for Yoga Movement and Massage, and there will be the workshop. It's not just for yoga instructors. It's for anyone in the public, maybe people who are therapists, as well as people who may be suffering from an eating disorder. Unfortunately, the yoga community can be a breeding ground and even a hiding place, a very open hiding place for eating disorders.
Really?
Because you're aspiring, like you had said, I loved how you had said about conforming to someone else's expectations. And really falling to that and not allowing yourself to really find your authentic self, even though yoga is supposed to be helping us find our authentic selves. But a lot of times in the popular culture of yoga, people are looking to aspire to be the body type on Yoga Journal, on the cover of Yoga Journal. Much of the imagery that is used to market yoga is very thin, waif-like bodies, bending into unimaginable positions.
Ally McGraw almost killed me on a DVD, yes.
And unfortunately, if that's a place where people say that's where you're getting acceptance for looking a certain way, then you're just continuing to feed that. You can hide your disorders by specialty diets.
Yes.
Being only vegan, or letting go of gluten, and no one really understanding why you're choosing some of these things, and saying, I don't want to eat too much because I'm going to practice, and then over practicing. And that can be seen as a very devoted student, but it's also someone who's over-exercising.
I've seen so much of that. I was part of the ballet community as a kid, and clearly that's rampant within that community.
Yeah.
I was part of the runner community. I used to host the triathlon camp at Crystal Lake, and so many young women there. But I'm healthy. I'm making myself healthier, and it's in the name of health. And
I had one student when Just Be Yoga was still really, really young, and by the third time I saw the student only coming to the hot power aggressive classes, and I really feel as though there was zero muscle mass on this person.
Yeah.
They had burned themselves away. I mean, you could feel all of the hip bones protruding everywhere. And I could not, in good conscience, not approach her and speak to her and say, you're welcome here. You're welcome here in meditation. You're welcome here in a slow class. But I cannot have you continue to come, to this hot power class.
Yeah.
And you never know where someone goes and they disappear. And ran into that person a year and a half later, much healthier, much filled out. And I'm actually friends with this person now, and they continue to struggle. There's a huge up and down, but that was the scariest.
It's a chronic illness.
That was the scariest part in her life, that she had almost completely made herself disappear, and had used the yoga to help continue to feed that.
It's that
disorder.
struggle for perfection, isn't it?
And acceptance, and whatever we call beauty, whatever we call fitness, a community. Where you're feeling like you belong within that community. So yeah, I'm really glad that you actually brought that up, and if folks are interested, there is training, and there's a place called the Inner Door want to say it's near Brighton, that is a facility that offers treatment using yoga therapy for people with eating disorders.
You know, Linda, what I find fascinating is it seems the yoga industry is recognizing it and is talking about it.
Yes.
Because a lot of times they hide, organizations like that hide dirty secrets.
Right, like ballet.
Like ballet or
Yeah.
some of the big gyms and things.
Right.
And
You're-
gymnastics.
You're confronting it, and that's kind of interesting. Or not confronting, but you're recognizing it.
Well, to me, that's then is our yoga, and so yoga means to connect and create a union, to yoke, to come together, and for us to ignore the harm that even the practice can do, would not be practicing yoga in its fullest. So,
Well, you offer such a wide range of classes also at Just Be Yoga that I think almost anyone, regardless of their level of fitness and flexibility and all of those other attributes, they'll find one where they can really feel comfortable, and that's part of your overall philosophy, isn't it?
that's our hope. In October, we will be 5 years old.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Just Be Yoga's Lansing's only donation-based yoga studio.
What does that mean?
It means give what's in your heart or what's in your pocket.
You do have a suggested, I hope.
We do.
Yes.
We have a suggested donation of $9 per class.
Okay.
But I aspired.
Which is very affordable.
Yeah, most studios the drop-in rate is $15. Unless you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, and that can be $25 for an hour to an hour and a half class. We wanted to make yoga affordable and accessible. Wanted to try to remove some of the barriers to practice, as well as within that accessibility to make it yoga for everybody. So whether or not you're tall, whether or not you're big, whether or not you're a little older, whether you want something slower or faster, whether you want something with your kids. We've wanted to be able to offer all of that. So we do have 40 plus yoga. We have what we call Yoga 2XL, and that is our curvy friendly certified class for yoga for bigger bodies.
My husband went to that thinking that it was Excel like Excel spreadsheet. And then he thought, or maybe I'm supposed to excel at this.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe
He was overthinking.
he was overthinking it. But he
Yes.
found out he really liked it.
Yeah. We have basics yoga. We have Tai Chi. This fall, we're adding kids yoga because we had kids yoga day camps all summer that were very successful. So we're going to have kids ages 6 to 12 in class. And kids are always welcome to come with their parents to any class of ours. So we don't shut the door just because you have your kids.
Cool.
Well, we use that as a barrier to practice. I got no childcare.
Right.
So bring them along. Let them roll out a mat. It shouldn't be something where we're distancing ourselves from our family. Let's do it together. We're just breathing and moving together and hopefully laughing along the way. And not practicing perfection.
One of the things some people are confused about is that there has been some sort of pushback against yoga as it's almost like a religion, and because it is a philosophy that goes along with the physical movement, and there is some tension sometimes with the religious community. How do you address that issue when people ask?
Well, I haven't had a lot of it. I encountered it a lot when I first started.
Oh, did you?
And that's when I had Just Be Yoga as simply a free yoga class in the gymnasium of the Shabazz Academy. And I had people who didn't want to do an Om or the Namaste at the end of class. I had a few people say, I just can't do that. It's going to be against my Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, no, honey, I don't think it's going to be against your Jesus. And but what it encouraged me to do was to always explain what things are and what they mean. So what is the Om and why are we doing it? And if you feel self-conscious about it, feel free to abstain or say Home or Amen instead.
Oh, that's cool.
And the same with Namaste. What does it mean? Well, none of us should blindly say words, we shouldn't absorb something without and adopt it without knowing what it means.
The cultural context.
Exactly. So everything that's good in me recognizes the same good in you, and I'm not bowing to you and you're not bowing to me. We're bowing to one another. And otherwise, you can just look at it as aloha, hello and goodbye, because if we were in India, it's just hello and goodbye. And we can demystify some of these things and hopefully try to breed some understanding a little bit more. I do believe in keeping the yoga philosophy and the sutras really really important part of the yoga. Otherwise, we are just fitnessing, and we're just making an industry where we've just created another type of fitness. And that isn't really all that yoga is about. There's 8 components to yoga. So, being good people. Let's just be good people.
Well, just to show you how old I am, I used to do Om back in the old days at Rackham Hall in Ann Arbor with Allen Ginsberg when he came in to read Owl. So that shows you how far back I go. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing,
He was
Michigan.
a practitioner of yoga.
He was, yeah.
Very early on. I
Yeah.
think that may be the first time I ever heard of it.
Were you there by then?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay,
I'm
because
too
it was
young- too
actually
young
a
for
great
that,
day.
honey.
Yeah, right. How many years difference?
Yeah, none.
Virtually none, yeah. I just got out more in that year, I guess. Yeah. Although you made it to Goose Lake, I didn't make it to Goose Lake.
Yeah, that was later though.
Oh,
There wasn't any oming there.
no oming?
No,
Yeah.
just drugs.
Just drugs. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that was a different type of higher consciousness that you may have achieved, yeah.
I think Ginsberg saw both of them though.
I think he did. He even transcended and started with the beats back in the old 1950s days. So that was more nihilism back then. So tell us, what else do we need to know? Now you were telling me that you have an LGBT Flow class as well? So make
Yes,
sure-
yes. One of the things that we're really proud of at Just Be Yoga is that a lot of our programming is created at the suggestion of our students.
Oh.
And so to kind of build community enough that people are willing to make suggestions and actually help them come to be. And I had a student who was always coming to the 2XL class who asked me a couple of years ago, would I entertain what she called a queer yoga class. So I started looking into it, and it's a bit of a wave going across the country called
Really?
queer yoga. Of course, like Austin and Columbus, Ohio, tend to be like the 2 main places where you're going to see that phrasing. But we ended up talking on the phone several times and really kind of hashing out why that would be needed. I didn't want to create anything
Right.
that would feel as though it's segregating, and really what tipped it for me was creating a class environment that the trans community would feel comfortable coming to. And as well as being able to address physically what's going on in the body when we're in transition. Okay, because estrogen will cause and wreak havoc on your body. And so joints start to really ache and hurt. And the same if we're switching into testosterone. There's going to be a lot of things that are starting to change. How to encourage someone who is binding to breathe. Or maybe even come to class unbound. And I've had students who felt they had to have a conversation with their partner because their partner didn't want them to come to yoga class unbound.
Really?
And finally came to class, and you keep talking about breathing, and I'm realizing I can't breathe because it's completely tight. But that he felt comfortable to come to class, wanted to find that freedom, and could be in a room in a community that's completely accepting. So it's allied as well. And it's on Saturdays at 3:30, LGBTQ Flow.
This is the time to bring in, I would believe, the Reverend Pj Anderson, and also she is here from the United Church of Christ, and also Todd Heywood, who's here representing both Between the Lines and Lansing City College, to talk a little bit about what you're doing down at Spiral. Tell us about what's happening down there.
Well, once a month, usually on the 3rd Sunday evenings of the month, Space for Grace Fellowship is sponsoring what has been named by one of the members in the group, Kickback Sunday.
Kickback Sunday.
Kickback Sunday.
Good.
And because we were trying to develop something that would be attractive to not only the GLBTQ community, but the allies who would find the club environment acceptable. And what was kind of going on in the back of our head was all of the things that have been said and done to the GLBTQ community by the religious community.
Right.
And that alienation gave us the idea, well, if they are through with us, let's widen the circle and so that we're all in the same family. We will come to you. And
Rather than make them come to your church, you
exactly.
go to a place that they might feel, the community might feel more
That is
comfortable.
correct. And it's working very, very well.
Are you reading a different Bible than some of these? Because they always
Same
say,
one.
can't do it because it's in the Bible. So
who
are you
is
reading a different one?
interpreting
Or
it?
are there a few
You're
pages
right.
torn out of yours?
Well, actually, he just the
Who's
operative word.
interpreting?
It's an issue. It's a matter of interpreting.
Uh-huh.
But I think that what makes the interpretation difficult is it takes work. You can't just assume that what you're hearing from the pulpit is accurate. That may be that person's experience. But if it's in conflict with who I believe God has created me to be, then we need to look at the backstory behind the scripture. And when I say the backstory, I mean who's telling the story and why are they telling the story and what's going on in that community that this kind of a story would have to be told, and how does this apply today, or does it apply? And I was willing to take that risk, but it's costly. It's costly. I in terms of having colleagues where I can just kind of hang out and talk about our vision and our dream. It's not going to happen. If one more person calls me a lesbian, I think I'm going to become one. But it's just because that's what happens. People get this idea.
The assumption is that you wouldn't care about that community unless you were a member of the community.
That is correct. And it has a lot to do with Oliver, my soul, SOLE, godson, who died last year, and HIV/AIDS with hepatitis C complication. But before he died, he had spent at least, not to my knowledge really, he had spent about 10 years pouring into me. Mom, we need a place that is safe for us to explore and to experience our spirituality.
Yes.
At the time I was pastoring a traditional church, took it to the powers that be. They were very excited. But the closer we got to the launching date, the more restless. And ultimately, 3 months before my son died, he said, Mom, forget it. Let's just do it. And so we made contact at the University of Michigan, where we had our first gathering. And there was about 12 of us, and it was wonderful. For our second gather, and that was February the 27th of last year. And at our first gathering, the question proposed was, is there a need for safe space? For LGBTQIA, SGL, for single gender loving individuals? Is there a need for there to be a non-traditional, almost an agnostic approach
Right.
to gathering, where we're free to ask questions and free to consider how we can be both, how we are, not how we can be, but how we are both spiritual and sexual. God, whoever our creator, the tree, whatever, creates us. God creates, and I say whatever because God is known by many names, and we are not about excluding anybody because they call their God this name. And like the lady you were talking about, saying, I can't do that, but this is about Jesus. Well, yeah, it is about Jesus, but Jesus is not the only God. Jesus is not the only divinity that people connect with. And so the community that night said, yes, we do have a need for an agnostic approach to exploring and examining and more importantly, experiencing our sexual, spiritual selves. So,
Sexual is so difficult for so many religions to cope with, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's shocking to me how I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when Pope Francis comes this fall
Yes.
and visits the United States, and some of the Republican candidates who have been saying, shall we say, I think it's going to put them on the spot in a lot of ways. But it's just very difficult for the church still, for many churches, to cope with the issue of sexuality. Are you still ministering at the traditional church in addition to doing this ministry?
oh no.
I was afraid.
I realize now, in December of this year, I'm going to be celebrating 30 years in the ministry, ordained ministry. I am a retired U.S. Navy chaplain that worked with President Obama on dismantling Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And it's very interesting.
Did you really?
I did.
Wow.
And that question is a very interesting question in that the church not only will not look at LGBTQ issues when it comes to sexuality, but not even with straight people.
Right, right.
It is because we
They're
have
still
been
so
taught.
conflicted about birth control and other issues. I mean, it's
Yes.
very difficult.
Because it's about control. I mean, when you, depending on the angle that you look at Holy Writ, you can see that women are clearly being abused.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from Genesis to Revelation,
Yeah.
women are being abused.
Yeah.
And women are considered as chattel, and women are considered the bed partner, but not the boardroom partner. I mean, it's just,
They deserve stoning for adultery, that sort of thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I've addressed your issue, but it's kind of like being a part of the traditional setting of the church is like trying to put Texas into Rhode Island.
Mm.
There's no fit anymore. There's
Yeah.
God has blessed me with people like my son here, like my son who died, like my daughter that I just met, or son that I just met. The more people who are providing ministry to the community that is not being ministered to by the traditional church.
We are seeing the increasing, I think, development of an entirely new kind of spiritual church emerging. I read a book a few years ago about how the need for a new religion. And it is, we are working our way towards how to combine spirituality, sexuality, human achievement, human potential into some sort of new coherent body that's very accepting and very inclusive and offers a broad range of things. What kinds of things do you do at your services?
We don't have a service per se.
Oh.
This is what we do this year. And the next year is going to be, we're going to add another a Sunday or another day of the week. But what we do is we gather for dinner. And we have some vendors. We have one vendor that is there now that sells jewelry if people want to buy it. And then just before we have dinner, we're just kind of mulling around and chitting and chatting. And then we ask one of the individuals in our presence to give the grace for the food. And then after that, we get our plates and we sit and we talk. I try to go to each table to talk with all of those who are gathered. And then then we have hired 3 singers. And there'll be a song, and we'll all pay attention to the singing, and then we'll go back to chatting, and then there's another song, and then that's when I present a piece of the vision. Every time we gather, I just give a little bit more piece of the vision, and then there's another song, and we're done.
Tell me about the vision. This is LCC Radio, W9.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Reverend Pj Anderson about the events that she holds every 3rd Sunday at Spiral. What time does that start?
6:30.
6:30? What is the vision? Tell me the vision.
The vision is almost singular and yet global, in that our agenda is to create safe space, not only at Kickback Sunday, but to develop that aura so that wherever we go, we are extending that spirit of safe space and that spirit of hospitality and that spirit of inclusivity. We want people at Space for Grace to get that in their spirit. Get that in your being. To create safe space where others, single folk, straight folk, otherly abled folk, LGBTQ folk, where others can feel safe in their own skin.
Mm-hmm.
Because until we feel safe in who we are,
Right.
there will always be that struggle. So that is the intent. That is the vision.
So it's more than just I was reading today the tragic case in Kansas City where there have been 2 members of the transgender community murdered in the last year, and a community struggling. When we see the cases in Detroit, it's more than just physical safety. It's also emotional safety, from what you're telling me.
It is
spiritual
let's
safety.
Let's get safe in here.
I see.
Because once you are safe within, then you can not only encourage yourself, but you can embolden yourself. And that's what's critical. It's the internal piece that's missing.
Isn't that part of what you do, really? Seriously,
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly. I love it. We're completely yoking right here.
Without
Because,
yoga.
well, it is. And,
Yeah.
you know, I often say, you know, I don't want you to come to this class in order to want to love your future self or to want to change something and fix something.
oh, I'll
Love
be better when I'm 20 pounds lighter.
Love the skin you're in.
That's right.
Love the skin you're in. Whether you're a bigger person, whether you're an LGBTQ person, whether you're an older person or younger person, whatever, a person of color, but love the skin you're in and feel each piece and not want to run away from it. So yeah, we're
Yes.
yoking right
We
here.
are.
Pastor,
Yes, sir.
when you decided to take this on, are there places where you can go and see this working somewhere else in the country? Are there,
Oh, that's a
are
good
there
question.
high points?
You know, now that
Columbus
is.
or
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, by the way, long before you were born.
I don't know. We might have to talk.
This is already a national piece in the United Church of Christ. There is
They're
a
very progressive.
some are now. I want you to think that
Okay.
all of us.
I'm not going to, you shouldn't waltz into anyone expecting to be
No,
I see,
no, no,
okay.
no. But Space for Grace Fellowship is using as our model. The City of Refuge United Church of Christ, now in Oakland, that Bishop Yvette Flunder started about 25 years ago. And because Bishop and I are both UCC, our United Church of Christ, it has been natural for Space for Grace to contact Bishop Flunder and ask her if we could mirror the platform that she followed in building City of Refuge, which is now, and now Bishop Flunder her cell phone number is in the cell phone of President Barack Obama, and Barack Obama's cell phone number is in her cell phone number, and we are connected. So you see where I'm going with this? So one of the things that we are doing is creating a cooperative with the City of Refuge and with the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, which is the post-denominational approach to ministry. So we call ourselves Baptist, Pentecostal, Methodist, the whole 9 yards. Under the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, which is TFAM, are about 200 churches, including 5 churches in Hong Kong, 2 churches in Africa, and a church in what's just below the border, Mexico. Thank you, the southern border. And so Space for Grace is developing a program for TFAM where people who have a call on their lives to serve God, but not necessarily the resources or the convenience of the 4-3, which is 4 years undergraduate and 3 years graduate, to develop a program that we are calling community chaplaincy certified programs, where individuals can be trained to be chaplains in their congregation, certified chaplains in their congregation. Again, getting this radical inclusivity and extravagant welcoming and open and affirming celebration idea of safety in the ether. We just want this thing to just be.
How long does that training take?
We haven't met to decide that, but my guess is going to be about 18 months.
Okay.
And we're going to try to connect with local colleges that will at least provide CEUs.
See, I, in 1962, became a member of the Universal Life Church for $5, right?
It's still $5, isn't it?
I think it's up to 10 now, but.
Oh, wow, okay.
See, my problem was I couldn't afford, you could be a bishop for 15 and a saint for 20.
My,
And
my.
I was so poor, I couldn't become either one of those. So, I mean, that was a slightly easier program to get into, I would think. But, I mean, that's the question is that, so you're finding it's an alternative ministry that would be certified through the Safe for Grace? Saving
Space for Grace.
Space for Grace.
Yes,
Okay,
Space
which is
for
part
Grace.
of TFAM, yes?
That we have made our application. That is correct.
So you will then be able to have this ministry spread even further into the culture.
That is correct.
Can I ask how you combine, because I think this has always been a challenge, if you layer in race on top of LGBTQ, right? Okay, that makes an even more complicated situation. How does race factor into this issue?
Oh my goodness. How much time did you say?
Let me throw in my station ID. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with the Reverend Pj Anderson and also with Belinda Thurston and Todd Heywood here. So yes, tell me, how does race factor
Oh
in?
my. Have you heard the terminology internalized oppression?
Yes.
That's how it factors in. Because no, my child, the Bible says that isn't about that you, the individual, is an abomination. That means disgusting to God. I can't. No, let's pray. Let's fast. We got to get rid of this.
Yes.
You
Pray
know,
away the gay.
That's right. Pray away the gay. And so and that is a lot about being black. And the stigma.
Oh.
The stigma that goes along.
The pain.
And the pain from being ignored. I mean, we
And physically assaulted. I mean, it's just, it's really.
and just
tragedy.
spiritually brutalized. I
Yes,
mean, I
yes.
know gay GLBTQ people who are sitting up in these mega churches, and these
Yeah.
ministers are just saying, y'all going to hell, and
Yeah.
between the pulpit and the door, they passing out cards so fast, and this is where I'll be. The ministers are doing this.
Yeah.
The bishops are doing this. They're standing up in these pulpits, and these ministers are saying, you're going to hell, and you're no good, and you're low down, and between the pulpit and the door, they have passed a card to that individual. Meet me at such and such a place. Or they have offered them a $100,000 salary to be the musician. The church pimps and prostitutes
Yeah.
the GLBTQ community of color.
Yeah.
Plain as well as, well, maybe the Pope will change it. But any church, any denomination, any religious movement that pimps and prostitutes and brutalizes people that are not like them,
Yeah.
in my opinion, have not met the Christ. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to be Christian, but it's a whole new different ball game to be godly, because that means to love everybody. Oh, excuse me.
Don't yell at me. I'm just enjoying the sermon. You go. Just let it go, girl. Let it go. Amen. I'm even going to hallelujah going on.
All right. But yes.
Todd's doing an altar call over here.
How about that? But yes, it's very divisive. I'll say this and I'll stop. When Oliver and I first started this relationship in 2000, and then in 2015, the United Church of Christ passed the marriage equality.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I thought I had tons of friends before that. But after that, and I stood with it, I can probably call my friends on 10 hands.
10 fingers?
10 fingers. Yeah, because they think I have 10 hands. They think I'm a freak now. 10 fingers across the nation.
May I ask something that's very personal? And tell me to back off if I. How did your son come out to you? When and how did that happen?
Well, number one, he is not a natural born son.
Okay.
And God sent Oliver to me because God knew that I needed salvation. I was the one that was lost.
Oh.
And for what?
That's a great perspective, by the way.
And for whatever reasons, Oliver saw potential in pastoring me from hatred and homophobia and denial and resistance and resentment and bitterness. He saw in me that diamond in the rough.
So he knew. I mean, he came to you and told you, and your first reaction was struggling with this.
Well, my first reaction was, I appreciate, your willingness to help me out, but I don't think I need any help.
Ah.
You know what I mean? And who you sleep with is none of my business.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Back off,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. But he kept at it. And one day, his soul was my soul, and my soul was his soul. And I have no idea. It's kind of like when you go into the military, and somewhere between going in and graduating, a switch flips, and now you are military. And I have been spending, since leaving the military, I've been trying to understand what it means to be a civilian godly woman, which is a whole different process than a military godly woman, okay?
So you were a chaplain.
That is correct.
And when you ministered to that community, was it before or after you had met Oliver and you had...
It was after.
It was after.
It was during.
During, okay.
It was that is a better answer.
So
It was
did
during.
members of that community reach out to you in that capacity?
Oh, long story short, there was another African American, speaking of race as an issue, there was another African American male chaplain. The family wouldn't, what happened?
She was just focusing the camera. It's okay. Keep going.
I keep hitting the button on the camera.
Oh, okay. This was the first time many of these people, these young sailors, had been affirmed.
Yeah.
So here you have a black person who is higher ranking, who is trying to get rid of me because of what I'm doing, chaplain, and then you have this other high-ranking person who is of the mind of an attorney, rescuing. It just depends on the setting, but by and large, black people are homophobic and in denial.
Mm-hmm. It is too bad, and we're seeing some of that exported even to other countries. I mean, it's part of what's going on with, and it's a global issue. It's not just an issue in the United States. What do you think is happening in the military now? Is it getting better? Is it getting more welcoming? Are there other chaplains like you still in a position to help?
I am in a position to help on the civilian side.
Mm-hmm.
One of the goals of Space for Grace Fellowship is when we are blessed to purchase or buy a property, we want to buy a family life center style. We don't need any more edifices. And we want to dedicate one of the floors to LGBTQ veterans.
Oh, interesting.
And runaways.
Boy, you're hitting an issue that has been a big one for me. One of my friends was the executive director of the Michigan Network for Runaway and Homeless Youth. And we see such a disproportionate number of LGBTQ young people who are really literally thrown out of their homes and on their own. And it's just, Todd, maybe that's an issue that you can speak to.
Yeah, the national statistics show that about 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ.
Yeah.
40%. We know with an organization down in Detroit, and the name is escaping my brain right now, and they work almost exclusively with homeless LGBTQ youth, that 40% of their youth, and these are 13 to 18-year-olds, self-identify as HIV positive.
I
Because
didn't know that.
many of them are forced into commercial sex work
Right.
as a way to survive.
Sure.
Or survival sex. It can be either or a combination. You know, the difference is commercial sex is a legitimate choice to say, okay, I have this commodity, my body, it's worth X amount, I can make money in an exchange for that. Whereas survival sex is, if I don't have sex with this person, I won't have a place to sleep tonight.
Right.
Or I won't have a meal.
Yeah.
Very different mental frames to be in, I
Right.
think. But the reality is
And then
that,
there's a sex trafficking element
Right.
on top.
right. So I do think that there's a real legitimate concern here when we're talking about HIV and the rates of HIV. And of course we know with young African American men who have sex with men and young African American trans women, young trans women of color are being targeted disproportionately for murder right now in the United States as well. There have been 18 confirmed anti-trans murders since January 1st in the United States.
Yeah.
18 of them. That's a really
Including down the road in Detroit.
right, and frankly, the one in Detroit does match a pattern that we've actually seen in anti-trans murders. That's been ongoing as an issue for at least 8 years. We believe there's probably a serial killer at play, because it's the same type of victim that's targeted. It's the same modus operandi that's happening. It's the same bullet casings. There's too much in common for it not to be a serial killer, but because it's trans women of color that are being targeted, trans women who happen to also be commercial sex workers, there's not as much commitment to solving that crime as there would be if it was, the white girl from the suburbs who came into Detroit and got killed.
Well, there's also an overlay. You were talking about self-oppression and self-internalizing, and that's part of the dynamic as well, where we see higher rates of suicide attempts and completed suicides, and we also see higher rates of addiction and self-medication with a variety of different kinds of drugs. So there's this whole constellation of problems that's so difficult to get to, because when you have kids on the street, they're really very hard to reach. I'm assuming that's part of, you're hoping that your ministry is able to grow and deal with all kinds of people at all ages.
That is correct. All kinds of people at all ages.
Yeah.
We've actually worked with, and I don't know if folks know about this group, it's called TRUE, and it's an LGBTQ teen group here in the Lansing area, and we've done yoga with them.
Oh, really?
And what I really love is that, it creates a nice affirming environment, particularly for trans teens. And we started the group introducing each other with our name and our preferred pronoun. And so we went around. What was extremely sad was when class was ending, a parent showed up early to pick up their kid, and their kid identifies as male, and the parent was fairly rude. Just demanding, bring me my daughter, and I know what her name is, and it was just, it was so disrespectful, and it kind of shattered a bit into this safe space, that we created, but nonetheless, every one of them has to go home.
They do, don't they?
and if we're talking about those who have homes,
right.
For this group, and you can just start to imagine why you might want to leave if your being is not being validated in who you want to be, in how you want to be addressed, how you want to be treated. It doesn't mean that you're not still this wonderful, beautiful, you're that being, you're that same being. You just can't impose upon them how they should behave, what they should wear, and how they want to identify.
I kept sobbing through a Frontline special recently called Growing Up Trans. It's available online to watch for free. And it is so emotionally wrenching, because you see even mothers and fathers divided, where one parent is accepting and the other parent isn't. And it's so complicated, and such a struggle for these kids. And you can't come away from that without enormous compassion for what they're going through. And you can see how these kids end up lost either in the system or on the street, or not knowing where to turn. And it's wonderful to think so that the yoga community will embrace them now, and the Christian community will embrace them. So if I were a young trans teen, I could still get into Spiral, even though it's a nightclub?
Absolutely.
Good.
At that hour,
They can't have any alcohol.
Sure. Sure.
Yes.
How do you do outreach?
Yeah, I was
How do
wondering
you-
how you promote
Word of
this.
mouth.
Just, that's wondering, just
Word of
word of
mouth.
mouth right now.
Yes, and the first time we gathered, there were about 15 of us, and half signed on the dotted line. And the second time we got 2, and this last time, which was this is August, right? So in July we got 7 more, and then in August there were 6 more new faces. So it really is and we always ask them to bring someone with them the next time.
So Between the Lines is going to write about this and help to expand this and bring attention to what's happening in the community?
Right, this is going to be part of our coverage for Pride, which is coming up this weekend. It's Lansing Pride, which is in August, because there are so many other Pride events going on throughout June that the Michigan Pride Organization said, let's just make ours a separate time.
know
I
that's
thought it was later. When we were
Yeah.
talking about it, I thought, it's not the right time of year.
That actually happened about 4 years ago. They moved it to August. So they would stop interfering with all of these other prides that were popping up all over the state, which is actually really cool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it also starts showing how bifurcated the LGBTQ community is becoming in the state. You know, they want to have their own regional.
I see.
So what we're seeing is we've got Grand Rapids, we've got Holland, we've got Muskegon, I think, has one now, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek has one.
Wow.
Battle Creek, Detroit, Flint. There's one in Traverse City. In fact, I almost had to drive up to Traverse City because they lost one of their speakers, and they called me the night before and said, "Can you come speak?" I'm like, maybe. There's one, I think, that's starting to form up in Marquette. So
Wow.
there is, in fact, there's a gay bar in Escanaba now.
Really?
Who knew?
Who knew?
I didn't know this. I do now. But the LGBTQ equality is happening in this state, and it's happening in very interesting and unique ways. And I think Space for Grace is one of those
that's-
unique
yeah.
evolutions that's happening. And one of the other things that I'll be reporting on, I have to go up to Traverse City for a conference next week, and on the way up, I'm going to stop in Barrington, Michigan, which is a tiny little town about 25 minutes outside of Mount Pleasant, to interview an openly gay man who has owned a business in Barrington for 20 years. He's been openly gay the whole time. Has a European mail order bride, male.
Wow.
And he calls him his male, M-A-L-E, bride. And he's going to talk about what it's like to be openly gay in tiny Barrington, Michigan.
That's cool.
And it's going to be framed in the context that there are some young people in Barrington who are being accused of sex crimes because they're openly gay. So there's this really frightening juxtaposition that I'm going to be writing about from there. So, sorry to bring up that sort of negative, but there's a little tease for you to watch for an interesting story out of Barrington.
Does BTL have a directory where people can go online to find out about things like the bar in Escanaba?
There is a directory, but it's sort of self-fulfilling. So you have to go in and fill out the information yourself.
I see. People can
and-
contribute.
And I think the Escanaba Gay Bar is one of those that's a whisper campaign things. So I was hoping to be able to get up there when I was up north this coming weekend, but I will not be able to do that, unfortunately. But that would be fascinating, actually, to go to the gay bar in Escanaba, I think.
Yes, yes.
I am going to the gay bar in Traverse City, which will be an interesting experience.
And that's not an underground bar.
That is not. It's in fact, I was up there 20 years ago when I was on the Michigan Pride Steering Committee. We went up and promoted Michigan
Parade
Pride.
coming up? Is there a parade?
There will be a parade. In fact, let me pull up my cell phone because I actually have some texts from Gina. We've got on Friday night is the White Party,
Oh, yeah.
which is going to be held right here at Adado Riverfront Park. That starts at 5 with DJ and drag performances from 5 to 7:30. There'll be a Kalamazoo band Treading Blue at 7:30. Steve Grand, who is an openly gay pop and country star, will be performing at 9. He's actually been drummed out of Nashville because he came out. And then by the way, if you want to, Michigan Pride, if you go to their Facebook page, they are offering a chance to win dinner with Steve Grand, so go like that. On Saturday, there'll be a parade at noon that goes to the Capitol with Amy Hunter, Representative Jeremy Moss, and then a festival at noon and all kinds of fun stuff. The evening concert is CeCe Peniston. So
Excellent.
come on down.
Well, so that's a wonderful weekend coming up, and that's perfect timing. And we're so happy to meet the Reverend here, and I want to keep in touch because I really
Yes,
want to find
please.
out more and more about what you're doing. And I hope to get you back and also talk a little bit more about what your life must have been like in the military. It must have been fascinating
Yeah,
to see you
definitely.
have to push back against a system that's not too used to being pushed back against.
You're
That would be
correct.
wonderful. And Just Be Yoga, are there things we need to know that are coming up?
We've got all kinds of new classes coming out next week, so go to justbeyoga.com and check us out. You can always drop by. All our classes are drop-in and donation-based.
And it's handy too, because they're all on the calendar and you can sign up right there and be authorized to go, and you know exactly that, that class is going to be there and available for you. And I want to thank everybody. Please tune in next week. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. You've been listening to the Lansing Online News Radio Show with Bonnie and Bill. We'll be back next Monday night at 7 p.m. and thank you very much for listening.